Welcome back to the Filipino FM channel, your home for Filipino Football Manager content. Today, we are putting two perfect teams in non-league. So we're starting them off in the Vanarama National League North, and we're going to see how quickly they can get to the English Premier League. But there's a twist with these two perfect teams. One of the perfect teams has perfect players with perfect hidden attributes, and the other perfect team has perfect players with horrible hidden attributes. And we're going to see which team will do better across the course of the save. So the kind of thought process for this is a few videos ago, we did the two perfect players in non-league, and it had some interesting results. And I was really surprised to see how bad the perfect player with the bad hidden attributes did. But we have an opportunity here to see what they would look like as a team. Potentially having 11 perfect players in the starting lineup will not make those hidden attributes as important because they'll have 11 players to potentially play better. On the other hand, though, it could magnify those issues. So I'm curious to see how it will do over the course of the save. So we're starting off in the National League North. Kettering has the perfect players with perfect hidden attributes. So as we can see here, we essentially just have a starting 11. So I'm just giving both Kettering and Blythe, who has the bad player or the perfect players with the bad hidden attributes, just the starting 11. So as we can see here, we have the perfect starting 11, and I've already unfrozen the attributes. So as you can see here, the game is already starting to nerf their attributes to a normal 200 CA player. But if we look at the hidden attributes here, 200 current ability, 200 potential ability, and a model citizen personality, they have perfect hidden attributes. So this goes for the same for every single one of the players here. If we go to the hidden attributes, perfect hiddens, and that goes for the entirety of Kettering Town's starting 11. On the other hand, we have Blythe Spartans, and they have perfect players again. So as you can see here, 200 CA, but they have horrible hidden attributes. So really injury prone, not good important matches, and things like poor professionalism, sportsmanship, etc. So that is the same for every single one of their players as well, as we can see here. So we're going to see who's going to do better over the course of a number of seasons. So again, none of the attributes are frozen, so they're going to regress as we would normally see them. So I'll be curious to see again closer to the end of the save how each of the team does. I expect both Kettering and Blythe to rise up the leagues very quickly, get promoted very quickly. But once both teams are in the English Premier Division, I'll be curious to see how each team does. So we are on 2022, June 27th. So let's go forward one season and see how each club is doing then. See you in a bit. Welcome back. We are on June 27th, 2023, one season into the future. And sure enough, Blythe and Kettering were promoted, but with Kettering doing a little bit better. Blythe with 3 losses. Who did they lose to? Kettering twice and Spennymoor. And Kettering beat them pretty convincingly, which, again, these are two teams that are essentially the same other than their hidden attributes. So I think we're already seeing those hidden attributes be important. Kettering, 46 wins, 0 draws, 0 losses. I will be curious to see how long they can go on their winning streak for. Let's see. They actually made it all the way, a National League North side making it all the way to the FA Cup semifinal. Almost disappointing that they lost to Brighton, but winning the FA Trophy, winning the Vanarama National League North, they've done really well. I'm surprised they made it all the way. I didn't even think about an FA Cup run, but a team that again has done absolutely brilliantly. Let's look at their players. Oh wow, so they pretty much only have their perfect players on the team still. They still look phenomenal, all still have 200 current ability. So all of Kettering's players still having perfect current ability, excellent stats still, really high average ratings, no surprise there. Let's check out Blythe. So this is what Blythe Spartans look like. We actually see a player injured for 3 to 5 months. That isn't a huge surprise. Only a 6.92 overall rating for our center back. Still having 200 current ability, but we saw with the other ones, we saw like a 7.7 overall rating. Still 200 current ability there, so they haven't regressed in any way, but significantly lower average rate. I'm shocked to see perfect players in such a low league having really low average ratings. It almost makes me wonder how they did so well. Okay, so we have, okay, right mid having a 7.57. So it looks like maybe the attacking players had higher average ratings, but the defensive players, unlike what we saw with Kettering, having much lower average ratings. So season one, both teams doing really well. Let's see how they did over the course of the season. They were knocked up in the FA Cup first round by Derby County and knocked out in the FA Trophy second round, albeit to Kettering. A significantly worse season. I think Kettering was phenomenal, and they had to go through the playoffs, obviously finishing in second place, but they did that pretty easily. So both teams will be in the Vanarama National League. Now, I expect both teams to fly up through the leagues. Nothing really to see here in season one with both teams doing well, but a slight advantage to the better attributes. Let's go 5 seasons into the future to 2028 and see how both teams are doing then. Welcome back. We are on the 30th of June, 2028. And let's see where each team is. And Kettering has made it all the way to the Premier Division. Looking at their history, promoted each year. No surprise there. And they've just been... Wait, did they finish first last season in the Premier League? They won a Premier Division. They've already won a Europa League, Super Cup Conference League, and 2 Carabao Cups. Let's look at their schedule and see how they've done. So last season, winning the Premier Division. Oh, and they got knocked out. Oh, in the playoff rounds of the Champions League. Again, I only gave them 11 perfect players, so I wonder if the lack of depth in the squad has taken a hit. Looking at how they did in the championship, they won the Europa League whilst in the championship, beating United, and a tough run of form in January. I wonder if all the games had a big issue to do with that, but they picked it back up in February to win the league. Skybet League 1 was when they won the Conference League. So that means they would have won the Carabao Cup or the FA Cup, I believe, in the previous season. Not losing a game in the Carabao Cup, or sorry, not losing a game in League 1, but they did lose in the Carabao Cup semifinal. Oh, on Pence. Brighton seems like the bogey team as we saw them earlier. So previously in League 2, losing in the FA Cup quarterfinal, winning the Papa John's Paint Trophy, and beating Manchester City 3-0 in the Carabao Cup final. And finally, how did they do in the National League? Winning the FA Trophy, getting knocked out by Brentford in the FA Cup semifinal, but destroying through the Vanarama National League. Wow, Kettering has had a brilliant rise. 11 perfect players, getting them all the way up to the Premier Division. And all of the perfect players still look phenomenal. Here's the center back. Looking at the attribute details, still 200 current ability. Let's look at the stats. Excellent average ratings overall. Playing really well, playing in pretty much every game. Looking at this player here, again, really good average ratings across the board. Let's look at the strikers, see how some of the forward players are doing. I mean, phenomenal goal scoring attributes, phenomenal average ratings. Every player is doing phenomenally well. So that's how Kettering Town is doing. Let's see how Blythe is doing to see if they've also made the Premier Division. And they're in the Skybet Championship. And they've been stuck in the Skybet Championship for well, this is interesting. So Kettering, they have 11 perfect players and they weren't able to get to the Premier Division. They've been stuck in the championship. So let's look at their team. I mean, they still have phenomenal looking players. 198 current ability, a little bit of regression there, but nothing too serious. But their average ratings are so poor. So they got promoted through, let's look at the striker. And even the striker's not having good average, significantly lower outputs, definitely been injured. But looking at the profile, that is a phenomenal player. 193 current ability. And already we're seeing, I mean, they should be 22 years old. They're still theoretically developing. Hey, this player has 200 current ability. But the hidden attributes make a huge difference. I mean, look at this player. He's phenomenal, 200 current ability, but average ratings are below 7, even despite scoring the goals. I am shocked to see what a big difference, even players who aren't getting injured that much. I mean, a lot of injuries here, but not for a lot of time, which means he's still playing in almost every game. But the hidden attributes are making a huge difference to how each of these players are doing. This is crazy. So this team is still stuck in the Sky Bet Championship, and they aren't doing that well, honestly. They have been stuck for a few seasons, and they've been poor. Wow, and even in Sky Bet League One, they had a tough ending after starting the season really well. I'm shocked at how poorly they've done. Let's look at their history, and they still haven't won anything. But again, second in Vanarama National League North, second in the Vanarama National League. They've been behind Kettering pretty much every season, but then narrowly avoiding relegation. I mean, or I guess they were kind of a mid-table team finishing 17th, but lower mid-table going up to 7th. The hidden attributes, especially at this point, are making a huge difference. Well, that's 2028. Let's go 10 more years into the future. Every player is going to be 32, and at this point, we might see some regression. So let's go forward to 2038, and I think we'll see some big differences at this point. So see you in 10 seasons. Welcome back. We are on the 30th of June 2038. Every player should be about 32 years old, and we should see some pretty big differences at this point. Let's start off with Kettering Town to see how they've been doing. So let's look at their overview. And they have won the league every single season. 11 perfect players, and they've won 11 Premier Divisions, 4 Champions Leagues, Club World Championship, 2 FA Cups. They've been phenomenal. Let's look at their schedule and see how they've done. So last season, winning the Champions League over Bayern Munich, the perfect players all starting, and excellent seasons in the Premier Division and winning the Club World Championship. They've been phenomenal pretty much each season, winning the Champions League again there. Wow. I mean, looking at their schedule, they lost to Chelsea in the previous Champions League final. But seeing this team, they're phenomenal. Let's look at the Premier Division. Again, looking at the past winners, it's been Kettering Town every year. Let's look at the records and see if Kettering has broken anything. So looking through here, I don't see one of Blythe's players actually has the worst discipline. Most clean sheets in a season for a good, perfect goalkeeper. But otherwise, I don't see any other records broken by Kettering Town. So they haven't broken most points in a season or anything like that. Let's go to the stages and see how they've done each year. They've been close to it. Oh, and Blythe getting second there. So Blythe actually doing pretty well over the course of the saves. But Kettering have just been absolutely dominant throughout the course of the seasons. Blythe actually, they've been kind of bouncing around. It looks like it's just recently. So they must have gotten promoted in that season. So Kettering, phenomenal. Let's look at some of the players. Again, they're all 32 years old now, so they should be on the downhill. But still, 199 current ability for our center back here. Let's look at our right back. And 200 current ability. Looking at the right mid, who's injured, so that might, but still 200 current ability. All right, every single one of these players is still doing 199. I mean, they're still essentially perfect. Let's see how they're doing. Average ratings are super high, even at 32 years old. I mean, our striker's phenomenally good. Center back, they're all doing phenomenally well. I'm also curious to see about the award winners, actually. So, Footballer of the Year, other than a few times, it's been dominated by Kettering Town players. Looking at the Player of the Year, again, same thing. Team of the Year, pretty much dominated by players from Kettering Town. And Top Goal Scorer Awards has been pretty much either of their perfect strikers, except this Kevin Michael guy. And he's, okay, I can see why he might have won it one season. But overall, Kettering Town's players have dominated. Let's check and see how Blythe is doing. All right, so this is Blythe. So again, we saw them get promoted from the Skybet Championship. It looks like it was a couple more seasons in the championship, but they didn't even win the championship. They got second. But after that, they worked their way up the Premier League, kind of bouncing around and then eventually finishing second every season. They have won 2 FA Cups and 2 Caribou Cups, but no European Conference League, no Europa League, and no Champions League. So they haven't really won a whole lot. Let's look at their senior squad and see how some of these perfect players are doing. And he looks really good at 32 years old, but only 169 current ability. Professionalism's barely improved. Consistently is starting to improve, but definitely not as good as the Kettering Town players, and really not great average ratings. Looking at the perfect striker, I mean, he looks phenomenal, but we can 166, that's it. And he's doing a little bit better. The perfect striker has some better average ratings at least. So at least a forward player is doing a little bit better. Let's look at the center mid. Again, really good current ability, but still lower, only 185. And again, not really good average ratings just across the board. 192 there, but again, not good average ratings. I'm shocked to see how poor the average ratings are. And despite the fact that they still have good current ability, it's fluctuated a little bit, but they're really not doing that well as a team. I wonder though, they have a lot of new players, and I'm curious to see if some of these new players are helping them to do well. So looking at some of these other players, oh, this guy's really poor. And he has a high squad roll, 139 going to 150. I mean, some of these players, like 65,000 a week for Marcus Pereira, and he doesn't look very good. Only going to 147. So it doesn't look like it's the other players that are helping them too much. So clearly some of the perfect players, even with the bad hidden attributes, have still helped them to finish second in the league. It just doesn't seem like they've won any trophies, and it doesn't seem like they're playing very well. Let's see how far Blythe have gotten in some other competitions, only making the Champions League round of 16 there. They did make the Champions League semifinal, but they lost to Chelsea. They won the FA Cup final. Oh, wow, against Kettering here. So they did get that Kettering win, despite losing in the Caribou Cup final and in the Champions League round of 16. They haven't really been able to make headway in the Champions League. They haven't won, they haven't made it past a Champions League semifinal. They haven't made a final. And they haven't been in the Europa League or the Europa Conference League, it looks like. Overall, I don't know. Blythe have been okay, but they definitely haven't been great. So that's 2038. I'm going to go to the end of the save and we'll see how both teams are getting along then. Welcome back. I am in 2043, 21 years into the future at the end of the save. Let's see how both teams are doing. Well, looking at Kettering Town, they've still won every single Premier Division, 8 Champions Leagues, 16 EPL titles, Club World Championship, Europa League, 7 UEFA Super Cups. They have been phenomenal. And how are the perfect players still doing if we go to their contract expiry dates? Perfect center back. The physicals at 37 years old, the physicals are not great at this point, but still 167 current ability and still putting out some great average ratings. I'll tell you what, even at 37 years old, this guy still looks fantastic. 179 current ability. Despite every player being 37, they're putting in fantastic performances. They're still fantastic and putting in great overall ratings. This really goes to show how important hidden attributes are, because the hidden attributes are the only thing that's different between the two sides. But Kettering Town's players are just putting in better performances, and even at 37 years old, they still have really high current ability and still look phenomenal. I think this says everything. They've won every single EPL, they've won 8 Champions League, and all their players are still putting in fantastic performances. hidden attributes are making a huge difference for Kettering Town. So this is what Blythe looks like now. And looking at their players, they've definitely dipped the past few seasons. They did win a Europa League and a Super Cup, but they haven't won anything else really. They've all kind of finished around the top of the Premier Division, except for recently. Let's look at their players and looking at some of them, that those physicals are awful and they aren't very good anymore. I highly doubt that they're finished and they're not putting in good performances. I don't think that their finish was probably due to the goalkeeper still looks pretty good actually. He's still done pretty well. But let's look at the striker. So looking at one of the strikers, 133 current ability. I mean, that's like lower Premier League quality, maybe. Looking at the other striker, he has great technicals and mentals still, but yeah, the current ability is poor. He hasn't done very well. Blythe must have been carried by other players on the team at this point. So let's look at Nicholas Brugman. And he looks pretty good. I can see why he 153 current ability. So it's these types of players that were carrying them at this point, I would think. Rogerio is a star player, 23 years old center back. He's phenomenal. So we can see the other players that were carrying the team at this point. So Blythe's reputation probably increased enough to sign these other players. I didn't put the other perfect players on a huge salary. So this would explain why Blythe is doing so well. Unlike Kettering Town, where their perfect players are still contributing consistently, Blythe's players are not. And looking at their players, I mean, none of the perfect players are still in their starting 11. It's just the goalkeeper, and otherwise, they have a completely new team. So, looking at their seasons, I mean, the perfect players aren't even contributing at this point. We don't even see them. Other than the perfect goalkeeper, they're not even in the starting 11. And they clearly haven't done as well. They still aren't winning Champions Leagues. They did get the one Europa League, but they haven't done great in the Champions League. They've made the semifinal. It looks like that's the farthest they've made it. But I don't see them making the Champions League final and any of these and their schedule for any of these seasons. So really, it's been completely dominated by Kettering. Well, I think that says everything we need to know. The perfect team with the perfect hidden attributes completely dominated the save, despite only having 11 perfect players. And Blythe, who had 11 perfect players but bad hidden attributes, just didn't do very well. But there's one more twist to this, and if you've made it this far, I appreciate you getting this far. But Kettering Town's players, all of them were Filipino, while Blythe's players were all English. So the Philippines had 11 perfect players, all from the Philippines, and I'm curious to see whether or not they won a World Cup. So we're going to go to the World Cup. And looking here, the Philippines won a World Cup with 11 perfect players. Looking at the past winners, they beat Brazil in the final. Oh, and England also won a World Cup with their perfect players from the look of it. But in 2034, the Philippines won a World Cup with those perfect players and three Asian Nations Cups as well, making it all the way to ninth in world rankings. Let's look at that World Cup and see how they did and how they've been doing recently. And overall, they've done quite well. But let's look, was it 2034? I believe it was. And there it is, the World Cup run, beating Wales, Cameroon, Turkey, beating China, France, Switzerland, and Brazil. That makes me very happy to see. But England also winning a World Cup. I'm curious to see if their perfect players were in that. So let's go to England and see how they did in the most recent, or in their World Cup win. So world rankings, England did eventually get up to one. No surprise there. And I believe they won it in 2038. Oh, they actually World Cup semifinal, World Cup third place in the most recent one. But none of the bad perfect players were in that. So let's go to 2038. So they did make the World Cup final. So looking at the bad perfect striker, was he in that World Cup squad? Let's actually go to milestones and 2038. So they were, some of them at least were part of that World Cup winning team. So both winning the World Cup, but I'm sure that England, I mean, they have a much deeper team. They would have, I'm surprised they didn't win it earlier, honestly, all things considered. But Philippines won a World Cup, England also won a World Cup, and Kettering Town dominated the save. So that's 21 seasons of two perfect teams starting in non-league. The perfect team with the good hidden attributes absolutely dominating. Kettering Town, 16 EPL titles, 8 Champions Leagues, and winning a league every single season. Well, thank you for watching. I hope that you enjoyed this Football Manager 2023 experiment, and we will be back with more content soon. Bye.